Welcome back, biologists. We're going to pick it up at the lecture we were not able to complete last week on vertebrate diversity. This is the follow-up lecture to the invertebrates. So let's continue to the first group of vertebrates, that being the fishes. So let's first start with a discussion of what vertebrates are. So vertebrates are those chordates you recall from last lecture. They are those chordates who actually possess a backbone. There are other characteristics about them as well, but that's really one of the main defining ones. So this includes all of the animals that you're probably quite familiar with, including fish, birds, mammals, etc., lizards, frogs. And even though we kind of think of ourselves as being highly advanced, of course, we are also vertebrates. The reality is that vertebrates arose 500 million years ago. That's right, vertebrates have actually been around a very long time. And there are two really important evolutionary developments that occur in the vertebrates. Number one is the evolution of a jaw. And the second adaptation, which occurs later on in the vertebrates, is the development of a lung. And so we'll talk about the first group of fish here, or I should say the first group of vertebrates, the fishes, and we're going to divide them into three main groups. The first group are called the agnaths, and if you remember, whenever we see an A in front of a word, that means not having it or not possessing it. So agnaths are fish that do not have a jaw. Gnath refers to jaws. So these are jawless fish. We actually have two varieties of fish still alive today that do not possess jaws. The next group of fish are the chondrichthyes. Chondra refers to cartilage, ichthyes means fish. So these are cartilaginous fishes, which include the sharks, but the thing that all these guys have in common is their skeletons are made out of cartilage. Now, this last group, the most kind of derived group of fishes, are the they actually break up into two, but here we have the superclass osteichthyes. Oste refers to bone, ichthyes again means fish. So these are the bony fishes. The bony fish we divide up into two main groups. The ones here at the bottom, the class Actinopterygii, include all of the typical bony fish that you see on a tropical reef or in a pet store. Your goldfish actually falls into this group. But there's one group in particular that is really weird, these Sarcopterygii. Sarcopterygii are related to these other bony fishes, with the exception that they have some unique anatomy. For example, they can actually ambulate with their arms, almost like walking. So we'll come back to them. But these three groups of fish really illustrate evolutionary leaps from not possessing any jaws to possessing jaws but still having a cartilaginous skeleton to having a fully bony skeleton to actually having articulating limbs. So this evolutionary trend is very obvious in the fishes. So fish are an incredibly diverse group. In fact, of all of the vertebrates, they are the most diverse group, with basically half of all vertebrates being fish. They also provide us with the evolutionary basis for invasion on land. Let's go ahead and start at the earlier end, the most ancestral end of the fishes, and these are the jawless fish. And one variety of jawless fish are the hagfish. That's this beauty here. And they don't possess a jaw per se. They do possess rasping teeth-like structures that allow them to basically tear flesh, but they can't chew with the jaw because they don't possess one. But they do have multiple gill openings, and that's kind of interesting. You'll notice here on this drawing, they've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gill openings here. And this is actually going to be quite significant because they share this in common with the cartilaginous fishes, but not with the bony fishes. And the other key feature of this really weird and unique fish is that they produce this slime gland capability. These little pores on the side of the body actually produce a protein which looks a lot like mucus, and when it touches seawater, it explodes and it turns into a whole lot of mucus. So any organism that comes along and tries to eat these guys is probably instead going to get a mouthful of mucus. That's pretty pretty gross. And again, no jaws with these guys. They have just a little small reduced eye that doesn't really function all that much like an eye. Their vision really isn't all that good. But there is one other characteristic about this group which you can probably recognize from the outside of the drawing here. These fish do not possess paired fins. So unlike your goldfish or a shark or any other fish on the reef, these fish don't possess fins. So this is a typical agnath fish. So no fins. Now, from this group, and again, there aren't very many of those agnath fish. There used to be a whole lot more, but they were outcompeted by the emergence of later fishes because of this one feature right here, the evolution of a jaw. And the actual jaw mechanism emerges early on from the remnants of gill slits. And these skeletal rods that form here on the bottom, these protoskeletal rods, eventually give rise to the elements that create a jaw. Now, possessing a jaw is hugely important because, again, as we mentioned before, it allows you to consume much larger prey. And in fact, there are organisms with jaws that actually are able to consume prey that are larger than themselves, particularly if they hunt together. So the thing that separates the agnath fish from this group of fish, the cartilaginous fish, is that the cartilaginous guys do possess a jaw. So again, cartilaginous fish belong to the class chondrichthyes, cartilaginous fishes. And there are some pretty interesting characteristics about these guys. They are the first to exhibit an actual jaw. So we see jaws in the fossil record emerging right around 430 million years ago. Again, they all possess a cartilaginous skeleton. One thing that they do share in common with the agnaths is that they also possess multiple gill openings. So their gills are covered by multiple slits, and you'll recognize that this is actually something that's very different from the bony fishes. Now, you have probably heard of fish possessing scales on the outside. Well, cartilaginous fish, just like the agnaths, do not possess actual gills. Do not possess actual scales. Instead, these guys have an outcropping from their skin called dermal denticles. Dermal, or derma, refers to skin, and denticles refers to teeth. So they kind of resemble teeth coming off of the skin, although they are not teeth. They just kind of resemble them. So this is what gives sharks, skates, and rays kind of a rough feel to their skin. If you rub their skin down one way, it feels like soft, wet rubber. But if you rub it backwards, it actually feels rough like sandpaper. So this includes all the sharks, skates, and rays. Yep, here they are. This is a great white shark in South Africa. They are all predators. All sharks, rays, and skates are predators of some kind. They are all highly adapted for swimming, and they represent a very diverse group of organisms that has remained unchanged for the most part over the last few 100 million years. It's actually quite impressive, and despite this funny Gary Larson cartoon here on the bottom, they don't eat scuba divers. Okay, so let's contrast them with the actual bony fishes, the Actinopterygii. Actinopterygii, it's a fun word to say. And these guys are the most successful group of fish alive today, representing 96% of all fish out there. And they possess this bony skeleton, which again makes them different from cartilaginous fish, whose skeleton is made of cartilage. These guys actually have true bone. And now, one of the evolutionary adaptations that we see that's different from the cartilaginous fishes is the possession of a single gill opening. So instead of possessing multiple gills like you would see in a shark, all fishes here, including a goldfish, have a single gill opening. Now, another organ that we see emerging in the bony fishes that we don't see in other groups is a swim bladder. And a swim bladder is this gas-filled organ. inside of these organisms that helps them control their buoyancy. So if you were to do a shark dissection and look inside of a shark, you would not find a swim bladder. Sharks maintain their buoyancy by sequestering oils and lipids that they put into their livers. So their livers are actually very oily and fatty and floats. So it helps the sharks maintain their buoyancy. Bony fishes do not have that. They have a swim bladder instead. So on an exam, if I was to ask you to compare and contrast between bony fishes and cartilaginous fishes, you would say bony fish possess a swim bladder, cartilaginous fish do not. You could also say that cartilaginous fish have multiple gill slit openings, whereas bony fish only have a single gill slit. And also another difference is that bony fishes possess true scales, scales like you've probably seen in a fish store. These are actually bone derived, so they emerge from the skin. They are a similar material to bone, although they are extremely thin, which is why they're flexible. But this is another difference. Cartilaginous fish, no true scales. They possess dermal denticles, but those are not true scales. Now, there are three main sensory systems found in all fishes, but there's a fourth one that is only found in the sharks and their cousins, the skates and the rays. The first one is really obvious, sight. Okay, so all fishes have some sort of vision, although they don't rely so much on vision. It's not their primary system, primarily because visibility is not all that great underwater usually. I mean, even in the nicest tropical waters, visibility is only going to be about 150, maybe 200 feet. But this right here is actually the more emphasized of all of the sensory systems. It's something that we can identify with because we can actually smell. Olfaction is smell, and it is highly developed in fishes. We know that because 2/3 of a fish's brain goes towards processing smells. And they can smell great distances because chemical signals last for a long time in water. Okay, so this is the first one here, lateral lines. Lateral lines are present in all fishes, and it is this pit, this actual channel that runs down the length of the body. The arrow here, the arrows are pointing to the lateral line on this particular fish, and basically they are lined with pores all along it. And as the water vibrates, as vibrations are traveling through the water, they push water in and out and in and out of those surface pores, and they create a pressure gradient inside this tube, which is recessed in the skin of the animal. Inside of these tubes, they actually have these sensory cells with little hairs all over them. So by using this system with the water vibrating in and out, these fish can actually detect water movement. They can detect vibrations in the water, and sharks in particular use this to hunt. But this is present in all fishes. Now, the one sensory system that sharks possess that no other fish possess, so bony fish don't have this, is the ampullae of Lorenzini. These are a series of pits that exist all over the head of the shark. Both, you can see it very clearly here on the nose, but both in front of the eye on the nose, but also behind the eye, right here, and then all across the jaw. And this is an electromagnetic sensor, which is pretty amazing that they're able to do this. And these are so sensitive, they can actually detect voltage down to 1/10 of a millivolt. That is really, really sensitive. And when you consider that your watch that you're probably wearing on your wrist right now uses a 3-volt battery in it to run it, a 3-volt lithium battery. That means that if you were in the water with your watch on, you would be a huge beacon, just basically beeping, and the sharks all around you can see you. So there's no sneaking up on a shark when you have a 3-volt battery on your wrist. Okay, so that's it for the various groups of fishes. We're now going to move to, I'm sorry, we're going to move to one more group of fish, the lobe-finned fish. But this is our transitional group of fish that we still have alive today. They were more abundant hundreds of millions of years ago, but we still have some existing on our planet today. They arose in the early Devonian era, and these guys possess actual fleshy appendages. This is interesting because if you were to look at the bone structure of the limbs of these lobe-finned fish, these Sarcopterygii, you would notice that they actually have an extra set of bones. And in the case